Okay, here we go. Barcelona-Lyon, the Champions League final on Saturday. Barcelona have never previously beaten Lyon. Lyon have won the two finals between the two teams, but Barcelona are the current European champions. Sophie, is this the inevitable final? Was this always going to be the final, these two teams? Are they that far ahead of everyone else in Europe at the moment?
I think there's been some degree of catch-up from some teams, but I think even before the qualifiers kick off, you're thinking Barcelona are favourites, and then you look at how the draw starts to unfold, you're thinking, yeah, Lyon, yeah. I think maybe we could have seen some upsets in the knockouts. Certainly, we had some in the group stage, but yeah, a touch of inevitability. Obviously, you've got Barcelona, the up and comers, if you will, to Lyon, who of course have been there and done it so many times. This should be their 11th final. But I don't know, we could have had some upsets, but yeah, tinge of inevitability. That's kind of the way football is, isn't it?
Yeah, and like I said, there's so many different sort of narratives going into this final, not just the sort of individual rivalry between Barca and Lyon, Emily, but the fact that both coaches are outgoing from their respective clubs at the end of the season. Jonatan Giráldez will join Washington Spirit in the United States, and it's not yet official. It's not yet officially confirmed, but everyone expecting Sonia Buonpastor to leave Lyon for Chelsea. So it's a chance for them to go out on a massive high, isn't it?
Yeah, I think every team always wants to send their manager off in the best way possible, and I know the Champions League is the epitome of success in Europe, so they're both going to want to walk away with that. And especially, I think obviously Barcelona are going for their quadruple that they've never had before, and for that to be in Jonatan's last season would be really nice. And similarly for Buonpastor, she'll want to start her career with Chelsea with a major trophy, the one that Emma Hayes couldn't win with Chelsea. So it'll be an interesting one, but I do think it does push clubs into want to do it. We saw it a bit with Chelsea in the WSL, how kind of her leaving really did push Chelsea at the last hurdle. So I think it's making both these teams probably more fight and make them work a little bit harder. It adds that little bit of pressure that I think will make for a really exciting game. But it's exciting that both managers are leaving. So it kind of, even though it would level it out if one wasn't, it leaves them still quite even, that they've both got that extra push.
Yeah, obviously Lyon, like I said, they've won the last two, Sophie. There's a little bit of spice before the last final, which Lyon won, because obviously there's a lot of sort of media coverage of Barca, how they play, how they've gone about winning things. But of course, they've not beaten Lyon in a Champions League final. Lyon have won the Champions League 8 times. There was a lot of respect when we spoke to the Barca players at the media day before this final for Lyon, saying that even a Barca win this time, wouldn't be a changing of the guard. What Lyon have done is historic. It would still take a lot more for them to win. But is that still a driving force for Lyon? This fact that perhaps there is a little bit more focus on Barca, perhaps because of the club as opposed to the team, if that makes sense. And there was obviously the Hegerberg comments before the last final, I think it was, when she said football or women's football didn't start with this Barca side. Is that still a little bit of spice for Lyon ahead of this final? This fact that they still, even though they've proven their point against Barca twice in 2019 and 22, yet they've got another opportunity to do it now in Bilbao this weekend?
I would say yes. I think, as sort of Ada says, football didn't start with this Barca team, and we've seen quite a sizable influx of fans after 2023, 2022, a little bit after 2019. So there are always people coming into the sport who don't know that Lyon are very much the queens of Europe, and then they've got this phenomenal history behind them, and especially sort of before the game really hit the professional era. And I think it's very nice to sort of Patrick to sort of talk about, it doesn't change anything. But I think Lyon do have that little bit of a chip on their shoulder because Barcelona get such big coverage, and there is, such buzz around them because of who the club are and because of how they play, and they've had the last few Ballon d'Or winners and such. And it does, I think it does help fuel Lyon as well, because for so long they were on top and they were always favourites, even against sort of Wolfsburg. It was always going to be a Lyon. But then you come into sort of the final in Torino, and everyone's saying, Barcelona. Lyon do not like that one bit. I think it's a little bit more balanced this year. I think there is definitely sort of a little bit more of people. There is the respect for Lyon there, but I still think a lot of people are looking at, look at what Barcelona are doing, and look at the Spanish league, look at X, Y, and Z. It's a little bit, I think, in some of the people, for some of the people getting into women's football more recently, the respect for French football, for Division Féminine, and what Lyon have done maybe isn't there. But yeah, a little bit of a driver. Maybe a little bit the chip on the shoulder. We do see that from teams, that they like to make themselves underdogs or change their narratives just to help fuel them. But I think Barcelona get some respect because of how well they play and everything they've done recently. But Lyon also do get the respect for their quite sizable history.
Yeah, I mean, there's massive motivation for both sides. This idea that Barca need to beat Lyon, this idea of revenge. Like I say, they didn't want to go big and sort of the idea that this is revenge, this is a revenge mission. But they're very clear that, that obviously you can't not remember the last two finals. They've got such huge disappointment. 2019, they talk about as being sort of the starting point for everything they've achieved since, in terms of really sort of realizing how much you have to put in and how hard you have to work to reach the level of that Lyon team. They've obviously won 2 Champions League finals since then, but against Chelsea and Wolfsburg, and then they've got the pain of the 2022 final against Lyon when they lost again. So there's huge motivation for them. We talk about sort of Barca in Spain, how they can keep winning, how they can keep dominant. And obviously that famous saying that winning once you've already won is the most difficult thing. But Barca do have these big challenges in this final this Saturday, overcoming Lyon for the first time, and also it would represent a 4-trophy season, a quadruple for the first time in the club's history. They may have won it last year, but they were kicked out of the Copa de la Reina for fielding an ineligible player, and obviously had to just do with the 3 trophies in the end. But it would be a historic season if they could beat Lyon and win the quadruple. Marta Terrejon, speaking to us last week, said it would be the cherry on top of the cake, the fact that it is getting over, sort of beating Lyon in the final. But I mean, as we've spoken about, Sophie's touched about, 2 teams packed with players who have, world-class quality on the Barca side and the Lyon side. Emily, where are we looking on Saturday? Who's going to be the game changer?
Oh, I think, as you said, there's so much talent in both teams, and I think they're both really, really stacked sides that have so much potential. And I think knowing how these finals go, kind of the last few ones have been decided within the first half, obviously less so last season, but we've seen it with Barca. They put 4+ Chelsea in the first half of that final, and I do think that it will kind of turn down to who comes off the bench. I think it's probably going to be quite a heavy goal-filled game, and there's so many good goal scorers in both sides. And I think when you can bring players off the bench in those sorts of finals that can finish the game, there's a lot of talk about starters and finishers, and a lot of the time it's the team that ends the game that are the ones that really have the control. And for me, I think someone coming off the bench for Barca, like a Claudia Pina, would be a really key player that could change that if Barca are behind or they need someone to change the game. I think it would be her. I think Lyon have a very similar setup, but I think they have so much ability and so much talent that even the players they bring off the bench, I feel a little bit are more experienced and a little bit more controlled, whereas Barca's, whilst they are very talented, haven't rode this out as many times as the Lyon players have. So I'd say on the Barca side, she's probably big game changer. I think for Lyon, obviously you've got so many players in there. Obviously you've got, I'm assuming they're going to be fit. Renard and names have gone out of my head now. But if everyone is fit in that Lyon side, I think that's going to be the slightly more scarier squad to face.
Yeah, you touched on the fact that, obviously everyone wants to start these finals, but the substitutes can have such a huge impact, especially when you look at some of the players that Barca will perhaps leave out. Perhaps Alexia Putellas will even be on the bench. She's certainly not established herself as a regular since returning from her injury problems these last years, but coming back on, she signed the contract renewal this week until 2026 with the option for a 3rd year. That could be a perfect way to celebrate that renewal, coming off the bench to seal a 3rd Champions League success for Barcelona as well. Maybe Mariona Caldentey will be on the bench. We'll see how they go with Rolfo Brons and Batcher as the fullbacks, whether they play Rolfo further forward as they did do against Chelsea or not. So yeah, like you say, those changes could be very key. But Sophie, the beginning is also so key in this game. Everything's key. It's all key. Because, as also Emily touched on, those last 2 finals against Lyon, they were over by halftime. Lyon scored early both times. And this was what, a lot of the stuff that was put to the Barca players as well. Like, how important are these first 5-10 minutes? And by extension, the first half, because, all 4 finals that Barca have been involved in, I mean, there's an exception with Wolfsburg with the fact they came back last year, and they sort of point to that as them maturing, the experience that they can take into this final. But, you know, their final against Chelsea, they were 4-0 up by half-time. The finals against Lyon were done and dusted by half-time. Are we going to have a final that's a little bit tighter, or is it going to be settled in the first half an hour again?
I think we're finally going to have a close one. I think we've got to the point is, you know, you talk about that Wolfsburg final, you know, being there in Eindhoven last year, it felt like this was a Barcelona team that had matured, that they had taken on board those losses to Lyon, and they had used that and sort of built up their own mentality that had been a little bit lacking. So I think it's going to be closer. You know, I think it's interesting that, you know, you sort of just touched on Putellas, who might come off the bench. Likewise, Lyon have their own sort of talismanic player who's just signed a new deal, who's not been that fit this season, and Hegerberg, who might come off the bench. So there's a lot, and they're sort of the type of players as well who can galvanise the team. So I think if one team, you know, if no one kind of runs away with it in the first half, and I don't think they will this time, then that's when the bench will be so important, and you bring on these big players. But yeah, I think we're heading towards a much closer final. I think, again, we're going to see some more pragmatism from Lyon. We're going to, like sort of Chelsea did in the first leg of their semi-final, it's going to be about not letting Barcelona play, which should slow the whole game down. And yeah, we might even go extra time or penalties even, which will just be, you know, gross for everyone. But yeah, I'm thinking a closer final, and an overdue closer final as well, I'd say.
Yeah, like you say, Hegerberg and Putellas coming off the bench would be great too. Not just legends of the game, but great spokespersons for the game as well. Everything they've achieved and everything they've done on and off the pitch throughout their careers. All right, cards on the table time then, just to go wrapping this up. You knew it was gonna end this way. Emily first. Where's this one going?
I'm going to say Lyon. I think as much as Barcelona have been so dominant so recently, I think the history Lyon have and the way in which they haven't had the best the past 2 seasons. So I think we're seeing Lyon going back to where they used to be. And whilst Barcelona are catching up, I think the history and the dominance that Lyon have had in the competition gives them a bit of the edge. And yeah, like Sophie said, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to extra time, but I am not penalties. I don't want penalties, but I am going to give it to Lyon.
Come on, Sophie. I've had a glimpse of your preview on the written preview, which is out on ESPN tomorrow. So I'm expecting you to be consistent here, unless you want to balance it each way, and then you can just sell which one you got right afterwards.
Get out of my mind, Sam. No, I think before the Champions League kicked off, I said Barcelona. Every sort of round, I said Barcelona. When the knockouts were announced, I looked at it. I said, right, Barcelona. And then we kind of got down to the final, and I thought, maybe not. I think it's going to be tough. But I think we also might be looking at Lyon being Barcelona's bogey team, about being that team that they kind of get in their own heads about. I don't think it's necessarily going to be a classic game, and it's certainly not going to be like a Barcelona-Chelsea or even sort of second half of that Wolfsburg game for Barcelona. And I think Lyon will just take it. But I also would not be at all surprised if Barcelona did it, because I've thought them all year. But, yeah.
Okay, well, I kind of understand you. There is that feeling of, you know, Lyon being this bogey side for Barca. But to balance things out, I'm going to go for a Barca win 2-1. I think it might take extra time, but I think they're going to nick it. I think they've shown throughout these last 5 or 6 years that they have learned from things, that they have experienced things, that they have matured. I mean, in Aitana Bonmati, they have the outstanding player in the world from the past sort of 12, 18 months. Caroline Graham-Hansen's having an incredible season in terms of goals and assists. She's up over 50 goal contributions in just around 30 games. You've got, you know, Salma Padalowelo. If you take your attention off them, she slips in. You've got Putellas coming off the bench. You've got Rolfo from whether she's left back or left wing. I think they've got a lot of talent. I think what they've won, not just with their club, but also the Spain internationals as well. Eleni Paredes, Aitana, obviously winning the World Cup and the Nations League, I think have been big for them in terms of belief. So I don't think they'll have, and obviously there could be a risk if Lyon score early, that the sort of mental, psychological side of those doubts creeping in. But I think going into the game, I don't think they have them. So I think they can do it this time. But yeah, it's what makes it a great final. It's so hard to call.